The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, my name is Jillian Schaefer and I'm the Marketing Coordinator for SWK Technologies. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar, How to Display Personally Identifiable Information, PII in Crystal Reports, presented by Bruce Kern of SWK Technologies. A little housekeeping before we get started. Everyone has been placed on mute to keep the background noise down. However, you can submit any questions you have throughout the webinar. To submit a question, look for the questions section in your GoToWebinar. We will answer all questions at the end of the presentation. We are recording this presentation and it will be distributed tomorrow to all attendees as well as to those who registered but were not able to attend. Please take a moment at the end of the presentation to answer our one survey question. With that said, we appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to attend our webinar. We're here to help you get the most out of your software solutions and help you find an easier way to run your business by providing you software and industry knowledge, tools, and support whenever you need it. So whether you're here doing research for a new solution or you're just here to learn, we'd like to encourage you to ask any questions throughout the webinar. Lastly, as a quick reminder, SWK is constantly sharing important updates and software tips and tricks on our social media channels, so we encourage you to follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Without further ado, I'll hand it over to Bruce.
Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you may be. So as Jolene said, this is going to be a section on personally identifiable information and how to display that in Crystal Reports. We refer to that as PII for short. And, you know, first thing I should probably say at the top is this is not give me a second, I'm trying to share my screen. Jolene, can you pop that back up? I think I got the wrong screen.
Yep. Did that go through okay?
Yeah, I think we're good to go now. Sorry about that, everyone. So sort of a disclaimer here is that this is not a class on how to write Crystal Reports. It's not heavy in formatting. It's really focused on how to get at the PII encrypted data so that you can actually use it in Crystal Reports moving forward. So we may do a little formatting, but it's not a class on Crystal formatting. So the next question here is maybe, why is this data encrypted in the first place? What data is encrypted? So there's a couple kind of things driving, you know, data encryption for PII these days. First is the IRS. They have, you know, policies, rules, laws that mandates that we have to protect employees' personally identifiable information. So that's part of the IRS code. There's also a lot of things showing up in the consumer privacy laws, which are scattered about in different jurisdictions. So we're starting to see this come into areas like payroll, AP, AR, and so on. The versions of Sage 100 that are affected by this are Sage 100 2018 and up. And we're going to take a look at 2019 and 2020 today. There are some differences within Sage in terms of how you would do this. They're not major differences, but there are some differences. And another thing to probably mention up front here is a lot of people are using Sage Intelligence or enterprise reporting to, you know, write reports that has maybe some of this payroll information in it that we'll look at today. And the fact of the matter is that will no longer work on 2018 and up. That is by design, and that is not going to be changed. Which leads me into talking about where it's encrypted. So Sage Intelligence, you know, is one place that doesn't work. Part of that is because that uses an ODBC connection. So ODBC stands for Open Database Connectivity. That's a way a lot of people tap into the Sage databases, whether it be through Excel, Sage Intelligence, any number of applications will use that type of a connection. That's no longer going to be allowed to access this payroll encrypted information. So that's just the way it is. If you're in a maintenance and data entry task in Sage, it will also be encrypted there unless you have the security rights. Lookup screens in Sage, those little magnifying glasses that we're all used to seeing and know and love that we can customize, it's only viewable there if you have the security rights. We'll take a look about what those rights are. And in data file display and maintenance, if you're more of a techie type person and you're working with the data file display tool in Sage, it's known as DFDM for short, the data is no longer viewable there as of Sage 2018 and up. So what are, what is the general kind of big picture about what we're going to show you here? The big picture in terms of the technique we're going to use, there's a couple different methods, but they all involve the use of a work table. Okay, so any of you who've been around Sage and written any crystal reports, or especially have worked with custom forms in Sage at all, you might have heard of these work tables. Well, let me just describe what a work table is. So a work table is a temporary table that pulls data out of some other table in Sage that actually has the information that you're trying to pull at the time you request it. So it goes and finds the data, it temporarily populates the work table and presents the information to you in your form, let's say. So the way the PII encryption works is it's going to utilize a very similar process using work tables to get at the data versus tapping directly into a database where you would used to be getting the data. So let's talk about what are those work tables and where is it encrypted? Well, what is currently encrypted? So there's really a couple different things. One table is called the GL_bank. So I'll just show you a few of these. So I'll pop over here to my file layouts in Sage, and we'll go up to the general ledger. And banking information, believe it or not, is kept in the general ledger, some of it. So here is the GL PII bank. Oh, it's giving me fits there. Hold on. Let's see if this works any better. Okay, that does work better. So this is the GL Bank PII work table. So this is one of the tables that has encrypted information in it that we're going to mention. So notice the GL Bank right above it, same fields, but these are what's actually encrypted here. So if you want to go look at a work table, you can get a pretty good idea of what's encrypted. Generally, the key will not be encrypted, in this case, the bank code, but the bank code description and bank account number would be encrypted. So we're going to go take a look at payroll real quick. So there's a GL check maker that's also encrypted. But we're going to work in payroll today. So let's take a quick look at the payroll one. So we're looking down at the payroll tables. And here's the PR employee. This is the one that we would have been using up to 2018 to get the data before it was encrypted. And then here's the work table. PR employee PII work. So we'll see fairly quickly in today's example, this is the table we're going to play with. And basically, most of these fields, with the exception of the employee key, department, and employee number, are all encrypted. So there's not a lot you can get at if you're going to try to write a report using employee information out of the employee table, unless you deploy these techniques. Now let's see here. Probably worth a mention at this point is that as of Sage 2020, and this is the 2020 version we're looking at right now, under accounts receivable and accounts payable, there's now an encrypt customer PII and encrypt vendor PII process. That's for encrypting information for customers or vendors that are inactive in your system. So be careful if you do that, read up on it, because I do not see a work table for customers and vendors in Sage 2020 yet. So that would mean that if you did encrypt them, that you may not be able to get at those encrypted fields. My hunch is Sage will probably add a work table, maybe in a product update, maybe in the next version, but there is no work table for those as of now. Okay. And then just a reminder, that's only for inactive vendors and customers. It doesn't encrypt the active ones. Now, if you're going to deal with the PII information here, there are some security events that we need to kind of review and make sure that the personnel have that are going to be dealing with this. So we're going to come up here to Library Master, and we're going to look at role maintenance. And we'll pick the admin role. And under the security events, no shock, since this is encrypted information that would be put under the security tab. There is a couple of places under here that we will need to look at. So for the general ledger, if you're going to use one of the two encrypted tables in the general ledger, there's this checkbox, allow viewing, printing, and editing of highly sensitive, personally identifiable information. That is the security right that will grant you the ability to see things in lookups, data entry screens, as well as work with these work tables. In Payroll, there's the same thing. Right there, it's just tucking it under Payroll because there's the Payroll work table. So if you're going to grant those rights, that's where you grant those things. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to do kind of a, what's it look like in one example in a screen, and what's it look like if you don't have the rights. So right now we're logged in as triple auth. That's the administrator role here. So we're just going to run a report out of Payroll that would have this encrypted information and see what happens. So we're just going to run the employee listing, pretty basic report, stock report. And we've selected to show the constant data. That's where a lot of this encrypted stuff is. And we're just going to go ahead and preview that. And notice that we see information, okay, because we have the security right. We'll close that, and let's change. I think that user is called test. All right, we're the test user now, and we'll do the same thing. And the test user doesn't have those role rights. So when test tries to view the information without it, they don't get a whole lot. So that's, you know, kind of how the security works, and that's an example of kind of seeing it versus not seeing it. Back to triple auth. And we're going to be in PO1. Okay, enough of that stuff. Now let's get into writing some reports. So over here on the left side of my screen, you see I have the Crystal Reports program installed. So to do this, you will need Crystal Reports installed. It comes with your Sage install media. So you all have it. You can install it in as many places as you want. It's not really a separate license thing. It kind of comes bundled with your Sage. So we're going to use Crystal Reports to start writing a custom report. So there's really two methods that we're going to do. There's creating a report without the PII table, and then going through this process to add it to a custom report menu. And then we'll do a second approach where we try to put the PII table in first. So let's see here. We're going to do method one, where we try to create the report without it. So I'm doing a blank report, and you know, whenever you're writing Crystal Reports, unless you have some special circumstances, it's generally preferable or recommended to use this SOTAMAS 90 connection. This is the one that actually, you know, talks to your Sage. You could have other connections. You see that I've got a number of them. And when you make that connection, it's going to ask you to validate which company code you're trying to talk to and what are your credentials. It's checking your security to see what you have access to. Okay, so I have access to everything, so it gives me the list here, and we're going to go down to Payroll, and we'll find our payroll employee. All right, there's our payroll employee. And we're just going to toss that over here and say, okay, we've got a blank report. Here's our database, here's our fields, and we're just going to drag some fields out here. And let's see, let's put the birth date. We're going to use a birth date kind of example today. Whoops, that's not the right field. All right, so really basic. We drag some fields out onto the report, and we will attempt to refresh this. And notice when we refresh the report, we don't get any of this other data because it's encrypted. So we can get the department employee number, but we can't get anything else. So that's our problem. So method number one is start your base report without your PII tables, see what you can get, and then we're going to try to add this to Sage. So we're going to save this. Now, I recommend that if you're going to add a report to the custom report menu in Sage, you turn off the save data with report. I'm going to turn that off, and then I'm going to do a save as. And we're going to save this in a special way, and I'm going to give you some recommendations on where to save this. So when not only do we have to use a work table, but we actually have to add this report for PII purposes to the Sage menu. These cannot run outside of Sage. And part of that is, the reason for that is that the PII work tables do not get populated unless it's attached to the menu so it can pass the data from Sage to the work table. It doesn't happen outside of Sage. It's part of the process. So what I'm going to do here, you could really save this anywhere, but the highly recommended place to do this is under your Mass90 folder on your server where it's saved. There's a directory, and in that directory, there's a reports folder, and I'm going to go ahead and save this in that reports folder. The reason I'm saving this here is because you'll see in a minute when we go to the report manager and we are trying to tell it we want to add a report, it is going to natively look there by default. So it's a good place to put your custom reports. It also means if you should move your Sage somewhere, that it will come with your copy of the directory. It also makes it easier to locate than being somewhere out loose in the environment. So there's a couple tricks to this. So you've got to name this with the words ending in custom.rpt, and this name can be no longer than 30 characters, which means you really get about 20 characters for your actual name once you factor in the custom.rpt. So I'm just going to call this bday1, has to end in the word custom.rpt, and I'm saving it under my Mass90 reports. There we are. All right, so I'm going to close this, and I'm going to just go ahead and close Crystal. Now we're going to go ahead and try to add this to the menu. So how do we do that? Library master. We have report manager under the library master setup folder. So when you come in here, there's a little button that says add report to the menu. We're going to click that button. Going to hit next, and it says, hey, what module do you want to add this to? Tip, you cannot add a report with PII tables in it to a module that doesn't have the PII table. So if you're writing a payroll report that's using payroll information, you must add it to the payroll menu. You cannot add it to some other menu for whatever reason you might want to. So just keep that in mind. So here's payroll. And here's where it wants to know where my file is. Notice it tells us right up here, this has to end in custom RPT and be no more than 30 characters. So you knew that already because I told you. So we're just going to hit the browse button here and look where it goes natively. It looks for right in that reports folder. So if I want to put it somewhere else, I could, but I don't recommend it. So there's my birthday report. I'll locate it, hit open. And as long as that meets the 30 character requirement, it should come in like that. And then we're going to give it a name. So I'm just going to call this bday1. Now here is in 2020 what you're going to see when you get into this wizard. These are the 3 work tables that Sage 2020 has available to you. So they're all there. And here's the one that we're going to need. So we're going to go ahead and select that for this report, and I'm going to leave the other 2 out because we're not doing GL information. Now here, I'm going to tell it who gets access to this report. So all custom reports have to be designated who gets access to them. So you can do this manually in role maintenance after the fact if you want. And we'll hit finish. All right. Now, let's go see what the next steps might be. So here on payroll, shrink these up, there's now going to be a custom reports menu here if there wasn't before. Now, there might have been one before if you had other reports, but here's my B-Day 1 report. Now, watch what happens. We're going to do a preview here. By the way, you'll see this little message about the report must be converted every single time you add a report to Sage, custom report menu. So just click yes, it's pretty quick. And this is still going to be blank. So by virtue of the fact that I went through the report wizard and the report manager and added the PII table, that alone is not sufficient to supply this data. So what do I need to do? We're going to go back to the report manager. I'm going to go ahead and launch that report. And we're going to do a couple things. So now when I look in here, because when I went through the wizard, I have both tables now. That's good. But it didn't give me much of an option to link anything. So for those of you who've done Crystal reports, you know that you have to link tables or the tables don't pass the information. So I'm going to first link those two tables. I suspect that's part of the problem. So I'm going to go under database, database expert, and here's my two tables. The second tab here for links is where I need to be. There's my payroll employee. I prefer a left to right orientation. So I'm just going to expand these out just to see what's in there. And I'm just going to link these by the employee key. All right, now there may be, you could have a whole discussion on linking. We're just going to go quick and dirty. That's how it should work, hopefully. So we'll click OK there. And now we've still got to do one more thing. Now they're linked, that's good, but we still aren't going to be able to display this data. So let's go take a look and make sure that's true. Still blank. No conversion message, but still blank. All right, so we got to take it all the way through the process. So here we are again. So the problem at this point is that we still cannot pull that data regardless until we replace these fields with the proper fields that will allow us to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to delete these fields out of here. Those are the ones that we're not seeing. We're going to open up this, and this time we're going to come to the work table, and I'm going to put in the birth date, and I'm going to move a couple of these things around just for grins. I really want the birth date on my far left because it's a birthday report. Remember, I said it wasn't a class on formatting. Okay, birth date, department number, employee number, and we'll add, some name information here. Okay, great. Let's save it. Let's close it, and let's see if it works now. Boom, and there we are. Now we've got all the data showing up. At this point, we'd need to do whatever we need to do to make it look right. If there's time at the end, I might show you a couple ideas for that. Okay, so that's the quick and dirty process. That one is one where we did not have the work table added. We went through the menu, added it. We found out we had to link that work table and so on. So now what we're going to do is do version 2. So here we are again. We'll do a blank report. SOTA mass 90, picking up a little more speed this time. Okay, we'll come down to our payroll. There's our work table. Not going to even bother with the employee table at this point. Add some fields. Okay, there we are. Let's see if we can refresh it. no information. It's a work table, has to be populated through the menu. That's why it's blank. Let's go ahead and save it. And we're going to call this B-Day 2. All right, so there we are. Let's close Crystal. Let's add that to the menu. Birthday 2. Notice it already has the work table added, so we didn't have to select it this time. And we'll finish that. And we'll give that one a run. Okay, so I think we're probably going to have to refresh this menu by getting out of it and back into it. Okay, here's birthday 2. Let's see what happens. There's our conversion message, gives you that every time. And bammo, it worked. So that one was a little easier, a little quicker because A, we didn't have to link anything. And since we had the native work table, we didn't have to select it and the data just came in. Okay, so that's kind of the gist of it. Now let's take a look at 2019 Sage and see how it differs. So bear with me here while I switch my VM to a different one. So now we're looking at Sage 2019, and we're going to do a similar report just to see how that wizard changes. Still using SODA 90, and this one, so that was a method 2. Now we're just going to look at 2019, and this one we're going to use, let's see, what company am I supposed to use for this one? Go right over to that work table. Similar to our last one. Okay, we'll give it a save here. All right, let's go get to that wizard and see what looks a little different there. All right, we're going to add the report to the menu. So far, it's pretty similar. All right, we'll call it B-Day 3. Now, this is where 2019 is a little different. I don't know why they made the change, but maybe just to keep us on our toes. But this one has a checkbox down here. Do you want to add a PII table? Then you check this box, and 2020 doesn't do that. So that's a key difference right there. Then here it's pretty much the same. But it doesn't offer you the work tables in a list like 2020 does. So that's a little bit of a nuance that it catches people off guard sometimes. And then we would have the same report down here, and it would run. And then I'm going to show you just since it's a birthday report example, I'll show you a quick little formatting idea for this, and then I'll probably open it up for questions. Okay, so there it is. So that's the difference. Pretty similar, but the wizard is different between the two. Okay, and then just for fun, I think what we'll do is we'll just do one little kind of formatting idea here. Let's see. So what we'll do, this might be the only formatting we do in this one. I didn't leave that open. I have to go back to the setup. So now what we're going to do, we're going to edit a report. So once we've added it, we'll come under the module itself. We'll have a custom folder there, and all the custom reports will be listed. There's our birthday 3. We'll click this little icon here to get into it, kind of launch it. And then let's see here. We'll come up with an idea how we could make this, maybe sort by the month and stuff like that. So we'll try to do a formula here. And we'll call it month. And let's see if we can get this to work. Okay. Let's see if I have my brackets all in the right place. Let's check that formula. No errors found. Okay, good. So we'll add month over here. We'll shorten up the first name to make space. Okay. We're going to group by the month. All right, we're going to say OK. And we're just going to take a look at the report, see what we have so far. Okay, we're heading in the right direction here. We're going to see if we can improve upon it a little bit. So we're going to go back here to our group expert, and we're going by month. And what we're going to do is in a specified order. And then what we're going to do is kind of create what that order is. So I'm going to say January. And we're only going to do a few of these just so you get the idea. try a March in here. Okay, and this order matters. So if you got these out of order, you can use these arrow buttons. So I'm just going to do the first three and say OK. And say OK. Let's save it. And then let's go ahead and take another whirl at it. So you can see I kind of have the beginnings of a birthday report. It put everybody who wasn't defined in these other category. There was no February. You know, and at this point, I'm just in cosmetic formatting land. So I would probably hide the year, mask that, add the other months, do whatever else I wanted to do. But we're able to pull the PII information. And in this case, you know, we're using a birthday report example. This is how we could, you know, create a birthday report. So that is pretty much it for what I wanted to show you guys. I'll open it up for some questions.
Thank you, Bruce. We'll now open it up for questions. If you have any questions, please enter them into the questions section of your GoToWebinar. We'll give that a minute in case any come through. And just a reminder, everyone, we do have a subject matter expert here. This is a great way to have your questions answered in real time. We do have one that's come through, Bruce. Are there any resources you'd recommend for formatting Crystal reports?
Boy, it's such a deep pool. I would say start with a beginning Crystal report class and work your way up, because they sprinkle in, you know, formatting all throughout. Another thing that I find helpful, that I use all the time, believe it or not, is just Google. Crystal is a very deep pool, and there's a lot of different techniques and things out there. So, you know, for example, for this particular webinar, I didn't know how to, you know, get these birth dates to show up by month, January, February, March. I actually Googled that, and it wasn't too hard. You just have to kind of use it. There's also a help menu, but, you know, for me, having something I can look at, i.e. class material, if I took a Crystal Reports class, or a recording or something I can find on Google. And we do have Crystal Reports classes from time to time. And I'm pretty sure there's some recorded Crystal Reports webinars in the SWK library that your CAM, your customer account manager, should be able to point you to. That's a really good resource. There's all kinds of things there. But that's my thoughts on that. I don't have a handout on it per se, but those are the things that I do. Good question.
Wonderful. Well, that's all the questions that have come in today, Bruce. So thank you so much for your informative presentation and for taking the time to be here today.
Anytime. My pleasure.
Have a wonderful rest of your day.